It was a quiet evening, much like many others in James and Emily's small home. They had just put their 2-year-old daughter, Ava, to sleep in her crib in the adjacent room. The house was silent, except for the gentle sound of the wind rustling the trees outside. Cooper, the family's Labrador, lay on the living room rug as he did every night. Always calm, he was the quintessential companion dog, known for his gentle and peaceful nature. But that night, something changed. Cooper suddenly lifted his head. His ears perked up. Slowly, he got up, walked to the hallway, and stopped in front of Ava's bedroom door. James, who was watching television in the living room, frowned. "What's up, buddy?" he asked, expecting the dog to return to the rug. But Cooper didn't move. On the contrary, he began to growl softly, something entirely out of character for him. Emily, coming from the kitchen, noticed the tension. "Is he growling?" she asked, surprised. James nodded and went to the hallway. "Maybe he heard a noise outside," he said, trying to sound unconcerned. But when he opened Ava's bedroom door, he found Cooper staring fixedly at a corner of the room, his posture rigid and his eyes sharp. There was nothing there, just the wall and an old dresser holding the baby's clothes. James laughed nervously. "It's okay, boy. There's nothing here." He patted the dog on the back, but Cooper didn't budge. The growling continued, and now his eyes darted between James and that specific corner of the room. Something wasn't right. Emily, feeling a chill run down her spine, stepped into the room and picked Ava up in her arms. "Maybe he's just spooked by a scent or sound we can't detect," she said, trying to reassure herself. But looking at Cooper's serious demeanor, she realized this wasn't ordinary fear. It was as if he knew something they didn't. Cooper was more than just a dog to James, Emily, and little Ava. He had been part of the family ever since he was a clumsy puppy with paws too big for his body. James often reminisced about the day they visited the animal shelter in search of a companion. Cooper had run straight to Emily, wagging his tail so vigorously it seemed he might take off. "He chose us," Emily always said with a smile. Since that day, Cooper had become a warm and constant presence in their lives. He was the kind of dog who could sense when someone was sad, resting his head on their lap to offer comfort. He shadowed Emily around the house while she cooked, sat beside James during football games, and even let Ava tug on his ears without complaint, wagging his tail patiently. When Ava was born, Cooper's love for the family deepened. He seemed to instinctively understand that this tiny being needed protection. In the early months, he spent hours lying beside her crib, as though standing guard was his primary mission. If Ava cried, he would run to alert Emily, gently tugging at her dress as if aware of the baby's fragility. The bond between Cooper and Ava was special. As soon as she started crawling, he would follow her around the house, ready to intervene if she tried something risky, like reaching for a high object or crawling too close to the stairs. "Our personal bodyguard," James would joke. And it was true. Despite his energy and enthusiasm, Cooper always managed to be gentle with Ava, as though he understood just how small and vulnerable she was. This history of loyalty and unconditional love made James and Emily trust Cooper completely. They knew he would never do anything to scare them without reason. But now, with this unusual behavior in Ava's room, the family began to wonder, what could be unsettling their faithful companion so deeply? The nights started to grow increasingly strange in James and Emily's home. Without fail, every night, Cooper adopted the same stance by Ava's crib. He stood upright, ears alert, his gaze fixed on the left corner of the room, exactly where an old wooden bookshelf stood. The growling wasn't loud, but it was steady, as if he was warning of something that deeply disturbed him. At first, James and Emily tried to dismiss it. "Maybe he's just reacting to some odd smell or noise outside," James told Emily on the second night, attempting to calm her. But as the days went by, Cooper's behavior became impossible to ignore. Even when the room was completely silent, he wouldn't relax. Always the same rigid posture, the soft, constant growl, and eyes that never wavered from that corner. Emily began to grow uneasy. "What if he's trying to warn us about something? Cooper has never acted like this before." James agreed, but he didn't know what to do. They checked every corner of the room. They looked behind the bookshelf, inspected the floor, and even checked for any insects or small animals hiding. But they found nothing. Concerned, they took Cooper to the vet for a checkup. "He's perfectly healthy," the vet said after a thorough examination. "Sometimes dogs pick up on things we can't, like sounds or vibrations. It might be something so subtle we'd never notice it." Despite the reassuring words, this didn't help the family understand what was going on. Emily's unease deepened when Cooper started becoming agitated even before they entered the room. During the day, he was his usual self, playful, calm, and loving. But as night approached, something changed. He would start pacing up and down the hallway, occasionally stopping to look at Ava's bedroom door, as if preparing for an important duty. James tried a practical approach. He conducted a detailed inspection of the room and the house. He checked the windows, searched for cracks in the walls, and even called a technician to check for electrical or structural issues. Nothing out of the ordinary was found. "I don't know what else to do," he confessed to Emily one evening as they watched Cooper sitting in the dark, his eyes fixed on that same corner. It was then that Emily suggested something they hadn't considered before. What if it's something we can't see or hear? Maybe a smell, a vibration, something bothering him that we just can't detect. The idea seemed far-fetched, but it made sense. After all, Cooper wasn't one to sound the alarm without reason. The mystery only deepened. The nights remained tense, with James and Emily becoming increasingly attentive to Cooper's behavior. Something was keeping the dog on high alert, and they needed to figure out what it was before anything worse happened. They had already inspected the room multiple times, taken the dog to the vet, and even made small changes like moving the bookshelf from the corner to see if it would calm him. Nothing seemed to work. Every night the same pattern. Cooper standing guard beside Ava's crib, his gaze fixed on the same corner, with that low, constant growl. "We need to investigate further," Emily said one night, rocking Ava in her arms. "The vet said dogs pick up on things we can't. Maybe it's time to call someone to examine the house." James agreed. The next morning, he contacted a home inspection company. 2 days later, the inspector arrived. He was an experienced man with modern tools and a powerful flashlight that seemed to illuminate even the smallest details. "Dogs are amazing at detecting unusual things," he said as he prepared to examine Ava's room. "They often notice problems long before we have any idea something's wrong." The inspector started with the basics. He checked the windows, walls, and floor. He used a device to measure moisture along the walls and scrutinized every detail. When he reached the corner that had been troubling Cooper, he frowned. "This is odd," he murmured. He pressed his hand against the wall, and James noticed the man growing more focused. "It seems like something is going on inside this wall." Using a thermal camera, the inspector examined the wall's interior and confirmed the presence of significant moisture accumulation in that area. "Probably a leak," he explained. "Over time, water may have compromised the materials inside the structure, causing subtle vibrations or noises that the dog is picking up on." The discovery worried Emily. "Is this dangerous?" she asked, holding Ava closer. The inspector explained that leaks could weaken walls and, if left untreated, lead to more serious issues like mold or even structural damage. "You made the right call by bringing in help. This could have gone unnoticed for months until it caused something serious." Additionally, the inspector found that the issue was worsened by a small gutter leak outside the house, which allowed water to pool near the base of that wall. He took photos, made notes, and recommended that they hire a repair specialist to address the problem as soon as possible. As the inspector packed up his equipment, Cooper stayed by his side, watching intently. The dog seemed almost relieved, as if someone was finally taking seriously what he had been trying to warn them about for weeks. That same afternoon, James began calling repair companies, determined to start the work as soon as possible. "I'm not leaving this like this for another night," he told Emily. She nodded in agreement. "If it weren't for Cooper, we never would have noticed. He saved us from a much bigger problem." While waiting for the repairs, they decided to move Ava into their room. Naturally, Cooper followed the portable crib to its new location, ever vigilant beside his little charge. The repairs began on a gray morning, with the sound of tools and muffled conversations from the workers filling the usual quiet of the house. James and Emily sat anxiously in the living room with Ava, while Cooper, as always, assumed his strategic position near the bedroom door. He watched everything carefully, his ears twitching at every noise, as though personally overseeing the operation. For them, it was impossible to ignore how attentive he was, almost as if he understood the gravity of the moment. After a few hours, one of the workers came downstairs with a worried expression. "Mr. James, you're going to want to see this," he said, his tone serious. James felt a chill run down his spine. He knew something was wrong. With a glance at Emily, who was holding Ava tightly, he climbed the stairs cautiously, his heart racing. When he entered Ava's room, James was speechless. The corner wall had been opened, revealing a scene he never expected. The internal beams were soaked, with black mold covering much of the structure. The smell of rotting wood was strong and pervasive. But what truly caught his attention was the state of one of the main beams. It was so compromised it looked ready to give way. It was clear that the problem had been there for a long time, hidden behind the pristine paint and finish that gave a false sense of security. "This is much more serious than I thought," the technician explained, pointing to the deteriorated wood. "This beam is supporting a significant portion of the weight above. If it had given way, it could have caused a partial collapse, especially over time. You're lucky to have caught this now." Emily, who had followed shortly after, stood frozen at those words. Holding Ava in her arms, she felt the weight of the situation. "You mean this could have collapsed? Even while our daughter was sleeping here?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear and disbelief. The technician nodded but tried to reassure her. "You acted just in time. A few more months and this could have turned into a tragedy." As James and Emily processed the discovery, another worker pointed out something even more alarming. At the base of the wall, the moisture had attracted termites. The tiny insects had begun eating through the internal wood, accelerating the deterioration process. It was as though the problem had been lurking, growing slowly until it became a serious risk. Cooper, who had remained silent until that moment, let out a soft bark, almost as if to confirm, "I knew it." Emily knelt down and stroked his head, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us," she said, her voice choked with emotion. The ever-loyal dog wagged his tail but kept his eyes firmly fixed on the workers, as if still monitoring the situation. James couldn't help but imagine what might have happened if they hadn't taken Cooper's behavior seriously. The thought of a partial collapse of the bedroom while Ava was sleeping was terrifying. He glanced at Emily, who looked just as shaken as he was, and murmured, "He really saved our family." The technicians explained that the compromised beams would need to be replaced immediately. Additionally, the drainage system outside the house was failing, allowing water to seep in and cause damage over time. They promised to install new moisture-treated beams and reinforce the entire structure to ensure the house's safety. The renovation would be extensive but necessary. In the days that followed, as the repairs continued, Cooper remained vigilant. Even when he wasn't in the room, he made frequent visits, inspecting the workers and carefully watching their every move. The technicians even joked that he was the project's official inspector, always attentive, especially when work was being done in the corner he'd pointed out from the beginning. During a break, one of the technicians remarked to James, "You know, I've seen many cases of dogs detecting problems before humans, but this one, he's special. If it weren't for him, you might have faced something truly serious." The night James and Emily fully grasped the gravity of the situation was a difficult one. As they watched Ava sleeping in the temporary crib in their room, they felt a mix of relief and gratitude. They knew that without Cooper's persistence, the problem would have gone unnoticed. "He wasn't just protecting Ava, he was protecting all of us," Emily said, stroking the soft fur of the dog sleeping at the foot of their bed. The repairs took weeks, and the more the technicians worked, the more they uncovered the extent of the damage. The infiltration had compromised not only Ava's room but also parts of the floor, and even the ceiling of the living room below. It was a silent, hidden problem that could have led to disaster. Finally, on the day the repairs were completed, James and Emily brought Ava back to her room. The walls had been rebuilt, reinforced, and freshly painted. The room looked perfect, but the memory of what could have happened still lingered in their minds. As always, Cooper was the first to enter. He walked around the room inspecting the repaired corner, and to everyone's relief, lay calmly beside the crib. No growls, no tension, just the peace that had finally returned to their home. The repairs were finally completed after weeks of intense work. The walls of Ava's room were reinforced, the new support beam gleamed with treated wood, and the drainage system had been completely replaced. The room looked brand new, with fresh paint and fine details. But for James and Emily, the most important thing was the sense of safety they felt when stepping into it again. That afternoon, after the workers packed up their tools and said their goodbyes, James and Emily stood in the room, looking at Ava's crib. It was hard to believe that just weeks ago, this space had been hiding such a significant danger. "It feels like we can finally breathe again," Emily said as she placed Ava in her crib. The baby, unaware of everything that had happened, played happily with a stuffed animal, content to be back in her little corner. Cooper entered shortly after, as he always did. He walked slowly around the room, sniffing the walls and floor as if inspecting the work. When he reached the corner that had troubled him so much, he paused for a moment, looked at James and Emily, and then calmly lay down beside the crib. For the first time in weeks, he didn't growl or remain on high alert. He simply rested, as if he finally knew the danger was gone. James smiled and knelt down to pet the dog. "Good job, boy. You're a hero." Cooper wagged his tail, but his eyes remained closed, enjoying his well-deserved rest. Emily watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "He saved us, James. He knew all along." James nodded, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. As the days went by, the house returned to its normal rhythm. Ava slept peacefully in her room, and Cooper, who had stood guard every night before, was now at ease. He still checked on Ava from time to time, but without the tension from before. His behavior returned to his usual playful, calm, and loving self. The story of Cooper quickly spread among friends and neighbors. James and Emily recounted enthusiastically how the dog had alerted them to something they never would have noticed in time. "If it hadn't been for him, who knows what could have happened," Emily would say, as Ava ran through the park with Cooper by her side, the two inseparable as always. The bond between Cooper and Ava grew even stronger after everything that had happened. It seemed as though the dog understood just how much she depended on him, even without words to express it. James and Emily, in turn, made sure to reward their loyal companion. Cooper received a new bed, plenty of treats, and more affection than ever. But what he seemed to appreciate most was simply being close to the family, knowing his mission had been fulfilled. One evening, as James tucked Ava into bed, he looked over at Cooper, who lay calmly near the crib. "I'll never forget what you did for us, buddy," he whispered. The dog lifted his head briefly as if he understood, then closed his eyes again, at peace. What could have been a disaster was avoided thanks to the instincts and loyalty of a dog who loved his family above all else. For James and Emily, the lesson was clear. Never underestimate what an animal can sense or perceive. Sometimes they see what we cannot. And in Cooper's case, he didn't just see, he protected. He was, without a doubt, the true hero of the house. As time went on, the household returned to normal, but Cooper's story remained etched in the memories of James, Emily, and even young Ava. That dog, who had been adopted as a companion, turned out to be so much more. He was a guardian, a protector, a true member of the family who was willing to do anything to keep them safe, even when no one else understood the reason behind his concern. Sometimes James found himself watching Cooper as he rested on the porch, gazing out at the yard with his calm demeanor. He would think about how the dog's instincts, so subtle and often invisible to human eyes, had saved his family from a disaster that could have been devastating. "He sensed something we never would have noticed," James would say to Emily, "and he didn't give up on warning us until we finally listened." This experience changed how they viewed animals. Before, Cooper was just the family dog, a furry friend who brought joy with his playful antics. But now they understood he was more than that. He had a special sensitivity, an ability to perceive the world in ways humans couldn't. They learned to value and respect his signals, his reactions, and above all, his unwavering loyalty. Emily, always reflective, began sharing the story with other mothers at the park. "Sometimes we think dogs are just being stubborn or anxious, but they might be trying to tell us something important. We just need to pay attention," she said with conviction, hopeful that her experience could help others see their pets in a new light. Beyond that, the family came to appreciate the small things. After going through such a delicate situation, every moment with Ava, every peaceful night in the repaired room, was a reminder of how grateful they were to have Cooper by their side. He was more than a pet. He was a symbol of care, love, and protection. And for Cooper, nothing seemed to have changed. He remained the same, cheerful during the day, protective at night, always by his family's side. Perhaps he knew in his quiet way that he had fulfilled his duty. Or perhaps to him there was nothing extraordinary about what he had done. After all, for a dog, loving and protecting his family is the most natural thing in the world. This story left a clear lesson for James and Emily. Never underestimate the bond between humans and animals. They observe us, understand us, and often protect us in ways we don't always realize. The loyalty and love an animal offers are rare gifts, and it's up to us to recognize and value them. As James stroked Cooper at the end of another day, he thought about how this dog had changed their lives. "You're part of our story now, buddy," he whispered. Cooper, as always, wagged his tail in response, content to be exactly where he was meant to be, by his family's side, protecting the ones he loved most. And so, the story of Cooper and his family shows us something incredible. The love and loyalty of an animal can truly change lives. But now we want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something similar? Have you had a pet who noticed something no one else did? Or maybe a moment when your four-legged companion cared for you or your family in a special way? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear about your experiences. What did you learn from them? If you've never had something like this happen, tell us what you thought of Cooper's story. Do you believe animals have this unique ability to protect and alert their families? And don't forget to share this story with your friends and family. Who knows, it might inspire someone to pay closer attention to their pet's behavior. Often the signs are there. We just need to notice them. If you enjoyed this story, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Here, we believe every animal has a special role in people's lives, and their stories deserve to be told. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. May your day be as amazing as Cooper was for his family.